Morning, everyone. I've just been given the cue that I can go for it now. So I guess we're going to be starting here. Very excited about this coming week, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. But let me first off welcome you to the Leadership Exploration and Development Summit, known as Leads Week. And so I'm very excited about what we have lined up for the coming week. A lot of time and effort has gone into pulling together content that will hopefully be meaningful for each of you as team leads, or for those of you that have a desire at some point to consider becoming a team lead. So, but why do this? Like, why have a leads week? Why is it necessary for us to pull together? I think we're at about 110 people have registered for this, so I was blown away by the response by each of you throughout the three companies. So we have members from Ready, Kova, and iQmetrix in this session. So why have this week? And it has to do with that the team lead role itself is one of the most complex responsibilities that anyone can have within any organization. If you think about it, what's involved just from the leadership element of a team lead, you're responsible for helping forge a shared, inspired vision within your team. You're responsible for modeling the way in your words and actions. You often find yourself having to challenge the process or question ideas, but doing it in a way that displays empathy and support. You're often finding a way to help others to act by nurturing an environment of collaboration and safety for the team. And then finally, on top of all that, you got this element where you're encouraging the heart of your team members through recognition and celebration. And then when things don't go well, through commiseration. So it's this complexity of leadership that you have, and coupled with that you're responsible to ensure that the team is on track and getting their work done. And that's not done in a way of being over top and being a drill sergeant, so to speak, but rather shoulder to shoulder, working with your team and really kind of guiding the team to deliver on the results. If you really think about it, why the team lead role is so significant, the execution of strategy primarily resides at the team level. And this is why we strive to have every person at iQmetrix, Kova, and Ready connected to strategy on a regular basis. This is why we want to have the monthly strategy meetings where everyone has input and can contribute to strategy. And I recognize that in some areas of the company, we're still going through a process of how to figuring out that strategy approach is fitting within your teams. But each of you in some shape, manner, or form today is connected to strategy. And then most importantly, on the execution of that strategy. It's the decision-making that we make day in and day out at the team level that really dictates our ability to succeed within each of the companies. So what can you expect this week? Our format or structure of the sessions is one where we wanted to have elements of theory that, a certain portion of the session will give you the context, the concepts, and a perspective around the theory. But equally important is that you'll have an opportunity to apply the theory. So throughout the week, you've got your workbook. If you don't have your workbook, there's a link within the Slack channel that I encourage you to get that workbook in your hands. Because with that, what we want you to be able to do this week is not only learn more about the team lead role and leadership, but we also want equally that you can apply what you're learning today and then throughout this week and the next week and the upcoming weeks. One of the things that you'll see with respect to the content is that the agenda is broad ranging, but the themes in the content taps into better knowing yourself. Effective leadership is all about having a high degree of self-awareness, and it's almost impossible to be a truly effective lead unless you have a strong sense of yourself. And you'll see this theme coming through. You're going to hear more about it and some elements to this in CK's talk in a few moments. And I want to encourage you to be able to really think through what this content means for you and where you're at personally in your own development on leadership, but even more important about that, of who you are. So it was a few months ago that CK brought up the idea of IQU doing something that would invest in the development of our team leads. This was pre-COVID. We didn't actually envision ourselves doing this event online. We actually thought we would either be doing this in Vancouver this week in June, or alternatively doing it in Austin, Texas in September around Meetup. So we didn't really expect ourselves to be in this online environment, but here we are. And so this is going to be a bit of an experiment. Try to roll with things. The level of effort has been massive on the operational side by team members, the content development. My hope is that everything will go smooth, but I encourage you just kind of roll with it to see how this experiment works out. Engage with the content and your colleagues with an open mind, and please put the effort into developing yourself. This part I'm really excited about. CK is the brainchild behind IQ University and not only this event, but he's also been the driver around iQOS and some ideas he has about where we as a company can move towards becoming developing that foundation for a 100-year company, but how we can actually do that in a way, in an environment that we really want to be part of and contribute to. So I'm pretty excited. We're going to have Chris take over at this point, but just as he's doing that, if you have questions about things that CK is bringing up, put them into the chat channel. I'm going to be moderating a Q&A. I've got some questions. I've got a lot of questions for Chris. I got questions for him. We need to talk. So I've got questions, but I want you to put some questions into the chat channel, and I'm going to do my best to moderate those questions and get them into a format so that we can explore the ideas that CK has. So I'll turn it over to you, Chris. You're in charge now.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Speaking of roll with it, I was actually just changing a slide 10 seconds ago. So, just 1 sec. All right. Get my presentation up here. Did you say I was a brainchild, Scott, to IQU?
You are the brainchild.
Are you trying to put some responsibility on me?
On the right side, yes. 100%. If this isn't perfect, it's all on Chris.
Well, you coming up with an idea. It's like, hey, we kind of need to learn. There's so much we don't know. Let's have a university.
Hey, so just in terms of rolling with it, I think what your screen you're showing, Chris, is the presenter mode screen.
Oh no. Okay, good. Thank you. Let's try this again. How's this look?
Perfect. Hashtag.
Awesome. Okay, now if I can. All right. Okay, so here we go. Well, yeah. Hello, everybody, and thank you all for coming. Yeah, this is exciting to actually have this virtual event. As Scott mentioned, I was expecting us to get in person, but it's been interesting how work from home is really, I don't know, it's been really enlightening. You know, we've done the survey, and I've actually looked at some other global surveys, and it's just how much we're actually able to do things in this virtual world, but yet we miss so many things in the physical. So we're, able to really look at this, a bit differently now. So today we're just going to have a brief presentation, and we're going to move into some discussion and conversation after that. So this is a question I've been asking myself for a while now, and I think yes, and the question is, are we in a phase shift? And this is a term borrowed from science, and one way you can look at phase shift is think of water as an element. When you change the temperature in water, and as it gets hot, it'll go from being a liquid to a gas, or of course when you freeze something, it's still the same element, but it'll go to a hard. And I think, globally we're, so much has been changing, our systems, and I think COVID's really shown the limitations of our systems, the fragility of our supply chains, and and I think COVID, yeah, is really accelerating this. And I guess looking down from there, if you look from our from the global situation, kind of at the root of this is that our organizations and institutions are really broken. You know, it's becoming apparent that these patterns are really, you know, no longer working for us, you know, working for the planet, no longer serving us. And when we look at people, we don't have to go too far. I mean, we all have our own experiences. We have our experiences at IQ, but this was a recent global survey that we got from HBR. In fact, it's the largest survey done on engagement, and it showed that globally, employees are 16% are fully engaged, and so that means that 84% of us are not engaged. They're just going through the motions at work. You know, we've been doing fairly well at an IQ level where I think in the last little while been in the 70s, but you know, I think there's just so much more here. In fact, actually, our questions, just so to bring it back to our survey, the questions that we actually around engagement, some of the framework of our questions actually came from this survey. So I guess there's an idea about our organizations and institutions. So this is my report card. I shared stories in the past about my education and that journey. So this was sort of the first, you know, institution that I got to, and it was like I remember when I first got to school, it was the beginning was you know, I enjoyed kindergarten. I was able to play. It's like much like my home life was. But then structure started to be imposed on me. And this is my transcript. I only had 2 classes in grade 12, but I basically quit school in grade 5. And you know, but this was this format of broadcast where, you know, you just have to listen and, you know, they just tell you what to think. It just seems so unnatural. And they were really, you know, teaching us how to conform, how to obey orders. And this just didn't seem right. So I checked out basically in school, but fortunately I really found solace in my activities. Lego was one of the first things. Thank you. I don't know if Joyce is on, but thank you, Joyce, for buying me all of those amazing Legos. And in school, I instead of paying attention, actually I daydreamed, which allowed me to escape to this other world. And here's actually Greg and my parents bought me a computer, and so I was really into a long time ago writing programs on cassette tape, and so I had a lot of great escapes throughout that period. So I was pretty happy with that. You know, maybe one other story too is like it was grade 5, but I had like a psychopath teacher. So it's interesting to observe kind of some of in the asymmetric power relationship, sometimes how pathologies go. And I think that was like really the catalyst to kind of make me check out. And so when I left school, I got a job where my dad worked at this steel plant. This is a guy actually inspecting a pipe. So my first job was a pipe inspector. I would go inside pipes, some smaller than this, and I would find imperfections and grind them out. But I was like super pumped. I was so excited, and you know, I was 18 and ready to take on the world. And I thought, oh, I'm finally out of school. So I was like, finally, I'm into the normal world and I can get on with my life. But very quickly, I realized that this was just like school. And you know, another thing that a lot of observations from my time there, and I learned a lot. But one interesting thing, that there was a union, and there was like us and them, and we were separate. Like there was management, and we had them. They were called the White Hats, and that just seemed so strange. Like, aren't we here together? So it was like I got depressed. You know, pretty much weeks into my work there, and this is where I guess the idea to create my own business and you know, and this environment was really this sort of this rigid structure, like school. It's like you know, it's like a fixed box, and you got to fit in the box, follow the rules. And I was looking, you know, this is kind of like more like my childhood, just sort of this random kind of emerging environment. And at that time, I was asking myself, why can't the world be more like, when I was a kid? And it was also around that time that I really discovered, well, the first thing I really discovered was Plato. Actually, what Scott was talking about at the beginning about knowing thyself. This is a famous quote from Socrates, who was my favorite philosopher. So this, I don't know, I'm so grateful to discover philosophy. This really inspired my love for learning. I think I was like, I had a bad taste in my mouth, and it completely reframed. But I also, at this time, just trying to understand the world, and from a theoretical standpoint, started to read Maslow and all kinds of things. Yeah. So from here, we're going to dive now into, I guess, some of that theory. So what do we know about human development? And I guess one of the things is, maybe we don't see it, this idea of phase shift, but the caterpillar, doesn't really know of the butterfly, but we do go through these transformations. Sometimes they seem gradual, but they are pretty drastic. And this is what life is about. It's this constant transformation. And if you actually look at like even the universe, we know the universe is ever expanding and accelerating. Nothing is really static. Nothing is fixed. And in the realm of human development, it's the same way. This is through anthropological research, they've seen that we are changing rapidly than ever. We were stuck in like hunter-gatherer, and then for a very, very long time, then farmer. But as the world has evolved, we start to change faster and faster and faster. So a little bit about human development levels. I'll go through this in a sec while I drink my coffee.
That's coffee, no less.
Yes. But yeah, it's important to understand aspects about human development levels. So nothing is inherently better about being at a higher level of development. Just like an adolescent is not better than a toddler, but of course, an adolescent is able to do more. Another point is that any development level is okay, but we have to understand, is that level a fit for the task? But also, that style of development, what are the impacts, on other people, perhaps on the environment? And there's also a tight correlation to your environment and your development level. So another way you can look at development levels we are like a product of your environment. And I saw that really firsthand at the steel plant. There was I could like map out my life for you. It's like, okay, everybody sort of behaved a certain way, and it's because the structure was ordered in a way of conforming and doing what you're told. So everybody just sort of developed that way. And even when it went out to their personal life, there were some really, really common patterns. And so the idea of becoming institutionalized was really apparent to me there. And maybe just a caveat on development levels, like the Myers-Briggs. These are really, really useful instruments, but there are lots of limitations, and they're not like an absolute truth. So just wanted to lay that out there. One of the development models I really, really like is from the social psychologist Robert Keegan. He did a lot of research. He's from Harvard as well. He created 5 levels. So we're the first 2 are mostly associated with adolescent development, but we're gonna focus on the last 3. So the first one, which is approximately 58% of the population, he called the socialized mind. I like to think of this as the institutionalized mind. It's like we are a product of our environment. So I was thinking what school was doing is like socializing me to follow orders and give me the tools, the basic tools to function in society. And so the next one is 35% of the population approximately. And this, he calls the self-authoring mind. And so some people, they do stay in the self-socialized mind. So it's not necessarily obvious, depending on that environment, people sometimes don't make that transition. So stage 4, this is where you step into your own sovereignty, where you've learned, like as Scott said, know thyself. You start making choices that are for you, and you step into your own sovereignty and your own identity. And the final stage that he outlined is the self-transforming mind. And like this is similar to self-transcending, and actually on this stage, he puts at 1% of the population. And so this is, you know, I think the best way to describe here is the ability to embrace the paradoxes of life, you know, these opposites, and hold them together as actually one truth. And, you know, this becomes really difficult. It really requires you to walk over to someone else's perspective and really understand and try to hold something sort of in between. So this is a really unique phase. And so in holding these paradoxes, not only can you help transform yourself, but you can also help transform others. The next model we're going to dive into is originated from spiral dynamics, and now integral theory utilizes. And this is deeply rooted in anthropological research and social psychology. And they use colors to identify the different phases of human development. So beige and purple go kind of way back, and so we're going to be looking at red to teal. So there's a few things to know. So the first thing is with red, the top half is more oriented around individualism, with a focus on the individual. And then as you move to, like, say, from red to amber, it's more focused on the collective. So the idea that as we evolve, kind of like a pendulum, when we go over here and we learn, then we go over here. So there's a back and forth, a dance of these polarities that come in. You know, as one thing doesn't start to work, we shift. And another important point about these human development levels is that we integrate the levels behind us. Once it's like discovering a new skill. You still have this old tool, but you found a better tool that works most of the time. But at some times you might find that you have to go back to tools and techniques that you learned at lower levels. So understand these levels as inclusive. So the first is red, and the metaphor is Wolfpack. So here you see a division of labor with a command authority. And so some of the attributes are impulsiveness, powered by chief, fear, thriving in chaos, predatory leadership style. So examples here are street gangs, tribal miltas, and at sometimes even governments. And I think here, this is where you see the power of a leader, where they can actually start to form and change. You know, their level of development becomes a reflection if they have that authority to change things. So now moving back to the collective, we go to amber, and this metaphor is the army. So you're starting to see from that chaotic, we're starting to see some order form with fixed structure, roles and processes. And you can see amber as the conformist. So you'll have formal roles in a hierarchical pyramid, top-down control. What really matters is stability, you know, predictability, and to do that, rigorous processes are celebrated. And the leadership style here is paternalistic and authoritative. So examples you'll see is the institution, I guess, of the Catholic Church is ordered this way in how it operates. Certainly the military and most government agencies and public school systems. Okay, so moving back to the individual side is orange, and this is really kind of our industrial revolution was really rooted on this, and this is founded on, you know, achievement and innovation, accountability, among meritocracy versus conformity. And so for the machine, for orange, it's about beating the competition, and innovation is the key to winning. And you see a real focus on goal orientated, you know, what by when style, and management by objectives. Examples here, you know, multinational companies are one. I think one of the reasons why it's harder for small companies to really and smaller companies to stay here, because you need quite a management system, a pretty rich hierarchy to keep this up. And so this is why you'll see multinational companies as being able to sustain this level. So from the machine, we've got the family. So I guess the inhumaneness about being in the machine, people are like, you know, we need to change this. And so this is where green comes from. And the breakthroughs, again, are just an understanding and awareness. So this is where the awareness of like empowerment and values-driven culture, a focus on stakeholders starts to become apparent. And so with green, there is a focus on culture and goals to achieve extraordinary employee motivation. The style is consensus oriented and participative. And so the examples are, of course, culture-driven organizations. But of course, like every level has its limits, and you know, green starts to run into challenges along the way around how you organize and how you actually accomplish really big, complicated things. And so, moving from green, there's this new tier in the research. They called it a second tier. I won't go into that today. But the breakthrough here is classified by three categories. So the first one is self-management and wholeness and evolutionary purpose. And so the metaphor here is, rather than being sort of fixed at various levels, as you saw with the other levels, you really start to move into a living organism where everything interacts more like nature does. And you know, and maybe why is this necessary too? I mean, I guess there's a lot of rationale sort of behind it, but you know, one of the ways you can look at that, the world is changing so quickly, and you know, the ability to need and adapt quickly is you know, more important than ever. And I think of like these you know, self-managing systems, like if you know, we saw COVID and all of the you know, all the things that broke. And when you're function like this, I think this is like nature. It's a much more resilient system. So some of the breakthroughs around teal, as I mentioned, self-management. This is really around trust. You know, building trust and the peer relationships that'll have high complexity, but isn't necessarily turned into a machine. So there's no need for hierarchy and consensus or command and control in this format. The next one is about wholeness, and this is, you know, we want practices that engage this and principles that support this, but this is about stepping into, each one of us stepping to our inner sovereignty, or another way to look at it, using Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero's journey. And the last one is evolutionary purpose. And so rather than fixed, it's a living organism ever discovering their identity. And as each individual has their journey, as an organization too, we have our own collective journey. So speaking of evolutionary purpose, we're going to go back to '99. This is actually the first site of iQmetrix. You know, we as a business, and I was in a phase shift at that time. You know, my business had reached some milestones, my first business, and it's like, do I want to do this? Like, I saw the limits of the structure and whatnot, and it's like, either grow this business or start a new one. So iQmetrix is like, okay, I'm gonna start iQmetrix. And so we were at a phase shift, and the business was called Mobile Technologies, then .com, then Jump. So that's the business for people that maybe are newer. And yeah, we started, there was an idea which around the use of metrics, but we started just building a CRM system and then an e-commerce system. So we really didn't know, you know, what the future was gonna look like, but we set out on our journey, and away we went. And then in 2002, we created some milestones, and we started to achieve some of those milestones along the way, like employee ownership. And a big one for us was $10,000, again, another threshold that gave us some critical mass. And you know, on that journey too, we had this idea of a 100-year company, which is like, and that actually came from Scott. So I'm going to pin that one on you, Scott. But you know, I think it was a great idea in which to think from. And what I want to share with you today is our mission actually as SRIB, and you can see how, you know, how important you know, becoming a teal organization can be if we are going to be around in 100 years with all the complexity and the resilience needed. You know, you can see that this would be a very important step along the way. So when we were discussing teal, you know, first and foremost, it needs to be a system for, you know, we need to be a place for people. I mean, we're here, we spend most of our time at work. We need a place that we can grow and develop, a place that's humane, a place for people. But also critical is that we're profitable. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, out in the business realm, you know, there's a lot of concern that can you do all these great things and be profitable? Can you be profitable without harming the planet? Can you be profitable without without people, you know, without using people for your benefit? And so we really want to show that if you can hold true to these higher ideals from an evolutionary way, you can be profitable. And there's some models of self-organizing that has shown this in the sense of scaling laws. So how do we get there? You know, as you know, we're a collection of teams, and you know, we need great teams, and to have great teams, we need great team leaders. So if we look at, I guess, the aspect of teams, the research is really clear. Like, if you're not part of a team, if you don't have that community, you're not that engaged. So 8% are engaged that don't feel themselves as part of a team. If you just are part of a team, you can over double that to 17%. And also, some of the same research shows it's actually even better to be on multiple teams. So this is where the concept of home team and geek team really was rooted from. But then there's a huge jump to 45% if you're on a team and you have trust in the team leader. So this is just one attribute, trust in the team leader. So the role of the team leader in building, you know, coherence among the group and supporting that team can have a huge impact in engagement. So you can see how important each and every one of you in your role, like, and this is only just, again, measuring just one attribute. So in closing, I just want to share a few points on leadership and on teams, and then we'll move into discussion. So some of these are pretty obvious, but high-performing teams include members of a balance of complementary skills. So, you know, this is obviously a pretty important thing if you want to accomplish complicated tasks. You want diversity and knowledge and views and perspectives. This can help you be more creative. And you need, you know, the right mix of members, but also establish norms that discourage destructive behavior. Like, how you work together really matters. And so coming together and figuring out, how do we want to behave? What are we going to value? You know, what are the behaviors we want? This becomes really important. And everybody, we want, you know, everybody should participate in strategy, and people will be at different degrees, and some will sometimes just want to understand first and then ask questions, but why really matters. And this is part of the journey of everybody stepping into their own sovereignty. And then from there, we have a responsibility to co-regulate each other's within the team. So we need to support each other. You know, everything isn't on just a team lead. You know, we can help each other, but the team lead kind of can hold the space, can be the steward of that. And then, more importantly, is as a larger organization, we also need to couple within teams and co-regulate with other teams. And so another way you can look at teal is a breakthrough in collaboration, a breakthrough in how we communicate. And you know, this is really needed in the world today, you know, in how we communicate within our communities at a country level, certainly, you know, to deal with the problems that we have. And the last point is, there's just some people I know in the organization that are like, I call them master architects, but they have an understanding of how to organize the architecture teams, what the relationships with this team and, this customer relationship and stuff. So there's some people that just over time develop a great gift in that area. And finally, some thoughts on leadership. So I see leadership as really two parts. One of them is the strategic perspective, so the ability to zoom out and make sense of things, make maps. The next part is character. And so this is really like your compass, who you are, like what's your true north, and discovering your own unique virtues and developing those, and then checking those virtues and values and collaborate and calibrating them with your coworkers and with the organization's values and principles. I just want to end with a quote from a hexagram from the I Ching. So the I Ching is a very old book of sage wisdom. It's 5,000 years old. It's one of the oldest books out there, and it's full of, there's 64 entries of different ideas. So this is from one of the entries, 45. So the world cannot move toward harmony and well-being unless human beings act in unison to further what is good and true. Our power as individuals is multiplied when we gather together as families, groups, communities with common goals. It is our collective strength that makes positive change possible in the world. However, the tremendous power of human collectives must be directed by good leadership. Therefore, the first task of the potential leader is to accumulate in his own character all that is good and true and correct. So that wraps up. I just wanted to share a few influences here. There's been more books than this, but the big one that I would point to is from Frederick Laloux. He has a book called Reinventing Organizations, and he's the one that really brought the human development models in and started to contrast that at an organizational level. And so with that, I'm going to be able to get some more coffee as we move on to the discussion. So I'll pass it over to you, Scott.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. If for questions that you have, post them in the chat channel in the Zoom that we're on, and I'll be monitoring those. But as those questions come in, and I encourage you, any point that you want clarification on or you want to explore deeper, I encourage you to put the question in. I can tell you that from Chris's perspective and mine, one of the things, this has been a topic of discussion and research for many, many years, that it's really important to us that you have an environment where a company where people want to be. And I know that Chris he talks about his MBA experience was the creation and the development and the growth of Jump.ca that helped prepare the groundwork for iQmetrix, and then subsequent to that, Ready and Cova. And one of the things that I've often wondered, and I've asked Chris in the past about, and I'd like him to really kind of explain this a bit further, is, and while I ask this question, maybe Chris, if you can go to the slide about the teal definition. How will you know, Chris, when we have actually, when you think about people, profits, and planet, and those three pieces, those three elements, and for those of you that have an appreciation of alliterations, please note that we have one in here. I have a strong appreciation of alliterations. How do you know we're there when it comes to the people, profits, and planet in the guise of a teal organization? How will you know?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, so I want to go back to the iQOS. So when in creating the iQOS, we ordered it in accordance to teal, but we've got some of the core processes in place. But one of the things that I've been working on is a concept of a new balance sheet. So there's actually a story there. When I was in my first business, I had a banker call a small government secured loan. Didn't think they're doing so well, and he said, I can tell you everything about your business from your balance sheet. And I look at balance sheet and like, this is like at best a half truth. And so one of the things that we're in development of is actually a new balance sheet where we can actually track, you know, aspects around people and relationships and trust. This is a huge, huge, you know, like value. We do need, of course, the financial measures, but then also the impact on the planet. And so there's a lot of things, you know, that I've been exploring, and, you know, we've done carbon credits and things like that in the past, but we're going to want to measure our impact, not just within the organization, but also beyond. But this will give us a framework in which to measure ourselves from. So, you know, we do have a few gaps still in the iQOS. You know, one of them, we've been working on a framework to deal with, you know, for example, compensation. How does compensation work in a self-organized company, and how can we bring that to life in an equitable way where people can be rewarded for their contributions in multiple ways. So yeah, so stay tuned, but we are definitely going to be bringing something pretty exciting in this realm.
Awesome. There's a question posted here. I think it's a great one around, so you mentioned, Chris, about the green level having the difficulty achieving tasks through consensus and such, where maybe not having the speed and agility. What in your opinion are some of the challenges, limitations of a teal organization, if any?
Yeah, well, we're you know, we're not functioning at a teal level, but we're, as I mentioned, we've ordered the system here. You know, there's not too many companies operating at teal. Most of them seem to be in Europe, but they don't have some of the same complexities as we do as a company. So I do believe it's possible, of course, that we can achieve that. But I actually, from you know, the challenges of a teal organization, what those are just yet, you know, I think we'd have to wait and see. But if we actually get to the place where we're starting to see challenges of the teal, this is a very, very good thing. And the next level is turquoise, which is very less understood. So
I've done the colors. One of the things that you've talked about in the past, and there's a question here from Andrew Kippers that I think is really cool, is that the balance between you know, chaos and structure, and where those intersect. And I know that you love those elements. Maybe, you know, Andrew's asking about, you know, a fair bit of chaos and diversity can come with self-organizing. I would suggest that maybe that there's moments of that, but it doesn't always stay in that state. And then, but there's a human need for clarity and structure. How do you see those intersecting, and what that actually means at iQmetrix, COVID and Ready?
yeah. Actually, one of the very, very first presentations I did maybe about 6 or 7 years ago on self-managing, I actually used a chaos and order visual, and it was like 2 circles crossed over. You know, we naturally are going to go and become out of balance, but I've always found that the best place to be is kind of on the edge or on the intersection. You know, 1 foot firmly placed in order, and 1 foot firmly placed in chaos. And so, as a bigger organization, this is where the scaffolding that a lot of, you know, our processes, the relationships, of course, of the people that comes out of this. This is, you know, this is why the system becomes really important, allowing us to build a complex organization that can hold this complexity. And you know, we're still at early stages here, but you know, without some tools, you know, large organizations, I think would find it very difficult. You know, I think small companies can thrive in chaos primarily because they're small and they can work at a level of connection and of relationships. So we need to somehow transcend that and be able to still have that within our teams, and maybe the relationship with a couple teams, because there's of course limits to how many relationships, but have a scaffolding that can hold together a broader network of complexity.
You know what? One of the things that we're dangerously close past our time, but there's something that I think that is very important that you and I have talked about that I'd really like us to get into, and it has to do with the scaling laws and the journey itself, and how that ties to creating great experiences. And I'm wondering if you could just kind of expand on those scaling laws and how it does actually connect with our purpose around creating great experiences, and that importance of the journey. So maybe if you just want to, if you could replicate the answer you've given me a couple times over the recent past, that would be perfect.
Okay, I'm not sure which answer we had. Well,
we'll find out.
yeah. I guess I was really intrigued by there's a TED talk, and I heard Tony Hsieh talking about this too. The idea of how cities scale. So what's interesting about cities is that they have a super linear scaling law. So the more people that come in, the more productive, the more GDP per person. There's a few different measures that they're looking at, and salaries go up. So this is why there's been like this huge movement towards cities. But contrasting that, corporations, as they go bigger, and just maybe back up, like scaling laws, just like if you think of a brick being 1 pound, if you add another brick, it's 2 pounds, a third brick, it's 3 pounds. That's a linear scaling law. So like 1 plus 2, 1 plus 1 equals 2. And a sublinear scaling law is, 1 plus 1 equals 1.5. So you actually get less, you actually go down. And one of the interesting things, as companies get larger, their the actual productivity goes down, and the bigger it gets. So this has been a attribute of the hierarchical type of structures. But cities are, there are different structures, but for the most part, self-organized, and they have super linear capabilities. Yeah, so if you would look at one of the measures that we would look at is, can we add more people and also, increase, and not actually decrease in our overall productivity. And it's not just sort of profits. We would look at, the measures that we really value on our balance sheet. So this would become a really important, elements of balance that we'll want to bring into harmony.
So the part that I love about this, and it goes, Kirsten Scott is asking a question about mental health and safety and trust and engagement. The core element of what you're getting at with the balance sheet is around people. It's about our colleagues. It's about members from each of them, so that that there is that safety for personal growth and development. And there's one piece I wanted to kind of, as we close off in a little bit here, one piece I wanted, so with safety and trust and having a connection to a broader group, how important that is. But there's also importance around personal responsibility. And so when you think about individuals and the importance of having people on the balance sheet, what is the responsibility of individuals within that context?
Sorry, what was the last part?
What is the responsibility of individuals within that context? Within a team organization, what responsibilities do we have individually in order to contribute to being a team organization?
Yeah, I think the responsibility, and it's not your sole responsibility, but it's to really step into your own journey and step into your sovereignty. When we do that, we become stronger as individuals. For example, by participating in the strategic process, first and foremost, then seeing how things unfold, you learn why, and you learn skills like critical thinking, but also not just from an analytical, but you've actually experienced it. So you get genuine experience. And in doing this, we actually become better at making sense of the world. We become better. We essentially become more conscious, and say more conscious, it's more aware, more understanding of our own actions and the impact that it makes. And we step into more responsibility naturally. And when you look at these human development models, this is the attributes. And so, one of the reasons why I'm a huge proponent of this, and it's of course, you know, I want, you know, for me, this is more like when I was a kid, and I think it's more, we do need to lead from this direction. This is much more humane and can be much more fulfilling. But in with more people stepping into their sovereignty and not being socialized, if you go back to Keegan's model, the socialized mind, we're less susceptible to, we're able to discern, you know, fact from fiction. And a lot of our global problems deals with not having enough people to be able to make the right choices and understand, you know, the implications of what they're doing. So like even at a, you know, at a global level, if we develop, you know, if there's more organizations developing more capabilities, we'll get better leaders. And so I feel like this is really important at this time that, you know, really take responsibility for their choices. And you know, inside organizations, this is where we really learn and develop these skills to be better human beings.
That's awesome. On that note, that's the closing question. I hope for each of you, there's some inspirational elements in here of what that actually means for you. And the gist of it is that you can take control over the choices that you're making. You can take control over what's happening within your world, and then being able to affect positive change for your colleagues. Mike, you're asking a question about how we can get involved in strategy and development of IQOS. I think that through this week there'll be elements of that, but your key contacts on it are the main architect of it has been CK, with a massive amount of contribution coming from Tracy Lee. Crystal's played some role in it, the broader group of individuals, but I know that Chris has really drawn a lot of these ideas not only from broader research, but also from IQers and individuals within each of the companies. So, but if you're looking for contacts, CK and Tracy are kind of the two of the main ones. Thanks very much, Chris. Really,
yeah, thanks everybody.
That was awesome. Queuing up Clayton. He's going to be stepping in next, talking about the role of the team lead. And the reason we put this at the beginning is that there are so many different definitions of what team lead role is. And we thought we should get some clarity about what are some of the expectations attached to that team lead role. So it's kind of our foundational piece. This is going to be followed by a session after a break by Tracy and Dr. Doug. I love the fact that he goes by Dr. Doug. I don't know why that makes me smile, but it just makes me smile that Dr. Doug is going to come talk to us about emotional intelligence. And as you know, within the team lead responsibility, you face so many different challenges, and having a strong sense of who you are and how you react to things is incredibly important. That's why we put the emotional intelligence piece near the beginning of the week. So with that, I think Clayton has put a link in for his session in the chat, or Aaron has done that for this. So I encourage you to click on that to join Clayton's session. And thank you. Enjoy the week. Get as much as you can on this week. Engage with your colleagues. Participate. Put your full energy into this. I think you'll have an amazing sense after this is all done of how you can continue to grow as a team lead. So thank you all.